Well, look at the
Boy.
wings on it. I mean, it's
Oh, wow.
that's
That
amazing.
is fascinating.
In this week's Torah study, we find out the biblical background to this medical symbol.
Geez, Edith, the guy's naked there, Edith. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asot b'divrei Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asot b'divrei Torah. La'asot b'divrei Torah. La'asot b'divrei Torah. Torah. La'asot b'divrei Torah. V'tzivanu la'asot b'divrei Torah. La'asot b'divrei Torah. B'divrei Torah. La'asot b'divrei Torah. La'asot b'divrei Torah. La'asot b'divrei Torah. Torah. La'asot b'divrei Torah.
Beautiful. Why don't we do the summary first? Cynthia, did you see the summary? Can you read the
Yes.
summary for us?
Yes.
Okay.
The laws of the red heifer to purify a person who has had contact with a corpse are given. The people arrive at the wilderness of Zin. Miriam dies and is buried there. The people complain that they have no water. Moses strikes the rock to get water for them. God tells Moses and Aaron they will not enter the land of Israel. The king of Edom refuses to let the children of Israel pass through the land. After Aaron's priestly garments are given to his son Eleazar, Aaron dies. After they are punished for complaining about the lack of bread and water, the Israelites repent and are victorious in battle against the Ammonites and the people of Bashan, whose lands they capture.
Wow. There's a lot going on here. Wow.
Tell me about it. Oh.
So
And there are details that are left out too, like when it talks about Moses hitting the rock. Like it doesn't tell you how, he wasn't supposed to hit it. He was actually supposed to talk to it, and it's part of what got him kept out of the land of Israel.
right, it does say that, that God gets upset because Moses makes it seem like he's the one Moses is giving them water when it's really God's giving them the water.
Right.
Right.
And God wanted him to kind of present it that way to the people, like, like talk to the rock. It doesn't specifically say it, but it kind of implies it like that, meaning that, like, talk to the rock and show them that I can bring forth, you know what I mean?
Right. So anyway,
What phrase did you just finish? Because I'm on a different page for some reason.
All right. Well, that was just the overview. That was just the summary of the whole thing.
Overview. Okay.
So
I don't have that on here. Okay, go ahead. I'm trying to follow two things at the same time. Okay.
That's okay. So the book of Numbers starts with chapter 19, verse 1 starts with the Eternal One, or God, spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, "This is the ritual law that the Eternal has commanded. Instruct the Israelite people to bring you a red cow without blemish." Okay.
I get it. I have a little bit different wording on mine, but it's similar. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is the Reform. This is right from the Reform.
This is more of a conservative one I have. So.
Oh, okay. So anyway, there's a lot of discussion about how, the ritual of the killing of the red cow, the red heifer.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of that, and then it's also the ashes, how it's going to be burned, and how everything's going to, in taking the wood, and it's very specific about how to go about it. And then it talks about the purity rites of if a person touches a dead corpse or corpse. A corpse is always dead, right?
A living corpse. Yeah. Touch a living corpse.
like a bandage could help a corpse. Anyway, yeah. But and then it goes on. That's verse 11 about how that person, if they touch a corpse, they'll be impure for 7 days. And then they go through a ritual. I'm just trying to get to that part where Gary was saying about the water coming from the rock. So chapter 20 of the book of Numbers, verse 1, the Israelites arrived in a body at the wilderness of Zin on the first new moon, and the people stayed at Kadesh. Miriam died there and was buried there. Poor Miriam.
And after she dies, that's when they're suddenly without water.
And that's a symbol, right? That's symbolic.
She's usually, like, Miriam is associated with water. I think I mentioned, Ruth, you guys probably know.
Yes,
like,
yes, that's true.
On Passover, like nowadays, like we put a cup of water, like Miriam's cup, like for the water. Mm-hmm. Wherever she was, there was water. And then when she died, there was no water.
Okay. And so then the community was without water. Wow. Just as you said, and they joined against Moses and Aaron. The people quarreled with Moses, saying, if only we had perished when our brothers perished at the instance of the Eternal. Why have you brought the Eternal's congregation into the wilderness for us and our beasts to die there? Why did you make us leave Egypt to bring us to this wretched place, a place with no grain or figs or vines or pomegranates? There is not even water to drink. Wow, that's heavy. That's heavy, again with the water. And Moses and Aaron came away from the congregation to the entrance of the tent of meeting and fell on their faces. Here it goes again.
That's right. That's important.
They are so devout. They're humble. They're humble in their leadership. Do you want to add anything to that, Gary?
No, I mean that's the other part of it. They fall on their faces. It humbles themselves. And they don't respond like immediately. They have to stop. Like there again, as it was with Korah. It doesn't tell you that Moses and Aaron fell on their faces for like a minute or two, or maybe 15 or 20 minutes.
Right.
But either way, it implies that they didn't immediately respond without pausing to pause first.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, they're going to talk to God. But either way.
Excellent. And then the presence of the eternal God appeared to them, and the Eternal One spoke to Moses, saying, you and your brother Aaron take the rod and assemble the community, and before their very eyes order the rock to yield its water. Thus you shall produce water for them from the rock and provide drink for the congregation and their beasts. So Moses took the rod from before the Eternal, as he had been commanded. Moses and Aaron assembled the congregation in front of the rock, and Moses said to them, listen, you rebels, shall we get water for you out of this rock? And Moses raised his hand, and he struck the rock twice with his rod. Out came copious water, and the community and their beasts drank. I know you got something to say about this. I know you do, Gary. Listen, you rebels.
Well, that's that. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to just say, isn't that the moment that because Moses had hit the rock and didn't really, just like touch it, that
right.
there was a consequence for that?
They didn't get to go into the promised land.
Oh yeah, that was a big consequence.
But you can look at it. You can look at it in the other ways too. That like nobody's perfect, and it kind of starts to show you that no leader, even a great one, should be a leader forever. And they had the incident with the golden calf. They have this, and not only did Moses hit them, but he said, "Listen, you rebels," and the people look fetchy ever since they left Egypt the whole time. Right. And a lot of times they're just being fetchy, for what might not seem like a valid reason. Not having water is a very valid reason to be kvetchy.
Right.
And
Especially in
yet
the
he's
desert.
right, and he's kind of like losing his cool and, oh, you rebels, shall we? And then yeah, he implies that he's, like him and Aaron are bringing the water forth
Yeah, right.
from the rock, So it's a few things, but yeah, that's the price that they both ended up paying.
Right. And what were you going to say, Cynthia? Were you going to add something?
No, I was listening. I was absorbing it.
I love it. Hi, Ellie. Can you hear us and stuff? It's so good to see you, Ellie. But also, isn't the rebels, when he says rebels, you can almost tell that Moses is starting to go a little bit off the rails. He's getting a little bit like fed up with having to lead these tired, complaining people out of, through the desert, and he's getting a little like tense. He's not. Anyway, moving on.
He's losing his cool directly after God specifically told him to do something a certain way. He immediately went ahead and did something different.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
That's human nature. We all do it.
Absolutely.
Right, but Moses is supposed to be held to a higher standard because of the position that he's in. It's always like that,
Right.
Yeah, it says, God says, order the rock to yield its water. Order the rock to yield its water. Huh. That's interesting. Okay, so verse 12, then what happens? The Eternal One says to Moses and Aaron, because you did not trust me enough to affirm my sanctity in the sight of the Israelite people, therefore you shall not lead this congregation into the land that I have given them. Those are the waters of Meribah, meaning that the Israelites quarreled with the Eternal, whose sanctity was affirmed through them. Interesting.
Because then they really had something to be upset about.
Right. So, I mean, how does this work? Because would Moses have done better if he said, here, God's given you this water? Would that have helped his cause at that point? I want to get this right because I don't want to go through these things.
It might have, but it might have not served the purpose of what we're supposed to, you know what I mean?
We're supposed to learn a lesson. It doesn't mean that it has to be right or wrong. It's just learning lesson. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, like the idea of like Moses, if he did everything perfect, so that would mean he'd be leading the people forever.
Right.
Like, it doesn't.
Right.
I don't know.
I'm with you. I mean, I think when I hear that God says, you didn't trust me enough to affirm my sanctity, my interpretation when I hear that is, well, if I look back at what Moses said and did, okay, it's like, here, shall we get water for you out of this rock? Bang, bang. And he smacked it twice. That really was like, he wasn't giving God the credit, I think, it was like, here, God has given you water, boom, hit it, and I don't know. It's maybe that's how I interpret it. Others might interpret it differently. I don't know.
That's what I agree. Yeah. I think that he was supposed to show God's sanctity by kind of talking to the rock and getting the water through God, but instead in anger, all right, you rebels, shall we get water from this rock? Boom.
Do you think that Moses actually learned his lesson from that? I wonder if Moses learned his lesson from that. We learned a lesson from that, but I wonder if Moses learned a lesson from that. Meaning after he did this, he said, oh my goodness, I should never hit it. Or are we only the ones to learn from that?
The damage was done, though. Yeah. One strike and you're out. Well, I mean, there again, it might have not been the first strike. But...
Ellie, you got... poor Ellie. I'm trying to get her.
Yeah, she's still muted on her end. Ellie, you're still muted, but we can see you, and we're glad that you're here with us.
Are we on 14 now? Or...
Yes, we're on 14.
Okay. All right. From Kadesh, Moses sent messengers to the king of Edom. Thus says your brother Israel, you know all the hardships that have befallen us, that our ancestors went down to Egypt, that we dwell in Egypt a long time, and that the Egyptians dealt harshly with us and our ancestors. We cried to the Eternal who heard our plea, sending a messenger who freed us from Egypt. Now we are in Kadesh, the town on the border of your territory. Allow us then to cross your country. We will not pass through fields or vineyards, and we will not drink water from wells. We will follow the king's highway, turning off neither to the right nor to the left until we have crossed your territory.
Mm-hmm.
You want me to continue?
Yeah.
Okay. But Edom answered him, you shall not pass through us, else we will go out against you with the sword. We will keep to the beaten track. We keep to the beaten track. The Israelites said to them, and if we or our cattle drink your water, we will pay for it. We ask only for passage on foot. It is but a small matter. But they replied, you shall not pass through. And Edom went out against them in heavy force, strongly armed. So Edom would not let Israel cross their territory, and Israel turned away from them.
Wow.
That was sad. Yeah,
that was sad.
That was
Cynthia,
sad.
would you want to pick it up, Cynthia? You're still muted, huh?
It's so funny.
Okay.
There you are.
Okay. Setting out from Kadesh, the Israelites arrived in a body at Mount Hor. At Mount Hor, on the boundary of the land of Edom, the Eternal One said to Moses and Aaron, let Aaron be gathered to his kin. He is not to enter the land that I have assigned to the Israelite people, because you disobeyed my command about the waters of Meribah. Take Aaron and his son Eleazar and bring them up on Mount Hor. Strip Aaron of his vestments and put them on his son Eleazar. There Aaron shall be gathered unto the dead. Moses did as the Eternal One had commanded. They ascended Mount Hor in the sight of the whole community. Moses stripped Aaron of his vestments and put them on his son Eleazar, and Aaron died there on the summit of the mountain. When Moses and Eleazar came down from the mountain, the whole community knew that Aaron had breathed his last. All the house of Israel bewailed Aaron 30 days. When the Canaanite king of Arad, who dwelt in the Negev, learned that Israel was coming by way of Atharim, he engaged Israel in battle and took some of them captive. Then Israel made a vow to the Eternal and said, if you deliver this people into our hand, we will prescribe their towns. The Eternal heeded Israel's plea and delivered up the Canaanites, and they and their cities were proscribed, so the place was named Hormah. They set out from Mount Hor by the way of the Sea of Reeds to skirt the land of Edom. But the people grew restive on the journey, and the people spoke against God and against Moses. Why did you make us leave Egypt to die in the wilderness? There is no bread and no water, and we have come to loathe this miserable food. The Eternal sent seraph serpents against the people. They bit the people, and many of the Israelites died. The people came to Moses and said, we sinned by speaking against the Eternal and against you. Intercede with the Eternal to take away the serpents from us. And Moses interceded for the people. Then the Eternal One said to Moses, make a seraph figure and mount it on a standard, and anyone who was bitten, who then looks at it, shall recover. Moses made a copper serpent and mounted it on a standard, and when bitten by a serpent, anyone who looked at the copper serpent would recover.
Very nice.
Wow.
That's
cool.
interesting. I don't remember that part. Isn't
I
it
don't
funny?
either.
It's funny how you read things over and over again. You forget that. It's funny.
Yeah.
I remember that. Wow.
And then, and also, I didn't think you're supposed to make a graven image either, except that's the first time I think I've heard God say you can make an image that's a serpent. That's
Yeah, but it's not a graven image of a god. It was just about making an image of the serpent for healing. So that's a little different.
Right.
Is that where the symbol for the doctor comes from that?
Wow!
Wow! That's a
Wow,
great question.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah,
my
yeah.
God,
Yeah.
that's brilliant, Annie. I
Yeah,
never
caduceus,
thought of
right?
that.
That's
Wow.
absolutely, yeah, the spinning, there's two
That's
serpents in that
right.
one,
Oh
right?
my
There's one
God.
serpent that-
Caduceus, isn't that the name of it? Caduceus is the symbol.
Oh, wow.
It's the
That is
medicine symbol.
fascinating. I never even thought about that till this moment.
Nor
You're
did
brilliant,
I, but
Annie.
it makes sense.
Annie's the
My
brilliant
sweet
one.
angel.
That's it. Gary knows it. Look at that. What do you know?
See
Can you
that?
see that?
Oh, wow. You're right, caduceus. Isn't that fascinating?
See that?
Wow.
That goes back. That's a great. That's
Wow.
crazy.
So how can't you say that science and the Bible don't relate? That's unbelievable. I love it.
Amazing.
I love it.
That is amazing.
That
Look at
is
all these.
fabulous. Look at, he's getting any type of symbol.
Wow.
Well, look at the
Boy.
wings on it. I mean, it's
Oh, wow.
that's
That
amazing.
is fascinating. So it's definitely the symbol of healing. Isn't that something?
Oh, do you see this one? Do you see this guy right here? I don't know if you can see that.
Oh, yeah, I see. I see. Wow.
It's like, look at
Jeez, Edith, the guy's naked there, Edith.
that. And there's a skeleton that the Grim Reaper is pushing back the Grim Reaper on it. That's amazing.
He
Wow.
might have had a fig leaf on him. He might have had a fig leaf on him, Gary. We won't know because we couldn't see below his waist.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Wow.
I mean,
that's
you know.
amazing.
Yeah.
Way to go, Annie. Knocked it out of the park.
Annie's the brilliant one, I tell you.
My sweetie pie.
All right, so then from there, they marched on and camped at Obeth. Does anything happen here? I want to just move forward a little bit because we got a lot of Torah to get through. And then from there, they had to Be'er, which is the well where the Eternal One said to Moses, assemble the people that I may give them water. Then Israel sang this song, spring up, O well, sing to it. The well which the chieftains dug, which the nobles of the people started with maces and with their own staffs. So that now they're happier. I think the Israelites are a little more happy as we come through this. And then they encounter the Amorites, and they do the same thing. Let me pass through your country. We will not turn off into the fields or vineyards. We'll just go right on the steady path, the King's Highway. We will not drink water from your wells. But Sihon would not let Israel pass. Sihon gathered all his troops and went out against Israel in the wilderness. He came to Yahaz, is that it? And engaged Israel in battle. Israel put them to the sword, took possession of the land from the Arnon to the Jabuk, as far as Az of the Ammonites, for Az marked the boundary of the Ammonites. All right, they took the towns. Now Heshbon, they settled in all the towns of the Amorites and Heshbon and all its dependencies. Now Heshbon was the city of Sihon, king of the Amorites, who fought against a former king of Moab and taken all his land from him as far as the Arnon. Therefore the bards would recite, come to Heshbon, firmly built and well founded is Sihon city, for fire went forth from Heshbon, flame from Sihon city, consuming Ar of Moab, the lords of Bamoth from the Arnon. Woe to you, O Moab! You are undone, O people of Chemosh. His sons are rendered fugitive and his daughters captive by an Amorite king, Sihon. So we're going to visit the Moabs in the next group. And yet we have cast them down utterly, Heshbon, along with Dibon. We have wrought desolation at Nophah, which is hard by Medeba. All right, now how does this end? So they occupied the land of the Amorites, and the Eternal One, and then Moses sent to spy out Jazer, and they captured its dependencies and dispossessed the Amorites who were there. They marched on and went up the road to Bashan. The king of Og of Bashan with his troops came out to Edrei to engage them in battle. But the Eternal One said to Moses, do not fear him, for I give him and all his troops and his land into your hand. You shall do to him as you did to Sihon, king of the Amorites, who dwelt in Heshbon. They defeated him and his sons and all his troops until no remnant was left, and they took possession of his country. The Israelites then marched on and encamped in the steppes of Moab across the Jordan from Jericho. Wow, so they're really close to the promised land at this point. All right, so this is part 2. Does anyone want to read the summary of Balak?
I'll read the summary.
All right.
Balak, the king of Moab, persuades the prophet Balaam to curse the Israelites so that he can defeat them and drive them out of the region. However, Balaam blesses the children of Israel instead and prophesies that Israel's enemies will be defeated. God punishes the Israelites with a plague for consorting with the Moabite women and their god. The plague is stayed after Pinchas kills an Israelite man and his Midianite woman.
Wow. Wow, another plague.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I don't remember. See, so many things I don't remember. Balaam blesses the children of Israel instead in prophecy. Why would Balaam do that?
Well, Balaam.
Because he.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, because originally when Balak was getting scared because the Israelites were, every land that they were coming through, they were, successful in fighting off whoever was there.
Oh, I see.
But when Balak originally sent messages to Balaam to request that he curse the Israelites, he tells them that, I can go with you to talk to him, but I can only say like whatever words God, puts in my mouth, basically.
Right. I see.
Mm-hmm.
And they kept trying to get him to. Balak kept trying to get Balaam to. But then we get the story with the listening to your talking ass. If anybody knows.
Yeah, the talking donkey is my favorite part.
Yeah.
I love it.
Should we do a little music here before we get into the second part, Gary? Do you have something?
It's up to you.
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
What should we? I'll be right back. Let me grab this. Should we sing Micha Mocha because we're talking about Moses and Egypt?
Sure,
and
why
Yeah.
not?
And we'll sing. We'll do Debbie Friedman's. Right?
Okay, whatever you say.
Okay. If everybody muted.
Everyone mute, please.
Oh, forgot. I'm gonna get a mute. There I am. Okay.
Okay. Ready? Bakodesh, Nora Tehilo do Sefer, Nora Tehilo do Sefer. Malachu Defara Uvanecha, Boker Yom Liftenu Sherumeyam, Seili Anu V'Amu, Seili Anu V'Amu. Bakodesh, Nora Tehilo do Sefer, Nora Tehilo do Sefer. La 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 la
Yeah, Gary. Nice. Okay, so here we are. Balak.
Back to the donkey.
Yeah, here's the donkey. It's good. This is a long
talking
one.
ass.
We're going to have to skip around a little bit because it's so long. And I do recommend everyone go back to this because it's told in one of these, it's really like a folk tale because there's a lot of repetition. It's a real like classic folk tale.
And where we get Matovu.
Matovu, right. And it's Torah, so it's true. It's not a tale, it's the truth. So Moab was alarmed that the Israelites were so numerous, and he was scared. And so he went to the elders of Midian, and he says that these people are going to lick us clean like the ox licks up the grass of the field. And so there was a lot of discussion. And there's a talk of, there's a people that came out of Egypt. It hides the earth from view. So they're so numerous, they hide, you can't see the earth. You can see them coming like there's dust and everything. They settled next to me. So this king sends messengers to Balaam, who is the prophet, who believes in God, the God of the Israelites. And, but anyway, he asks the messengers to bring Balaam to him so that he can curse these people, because if Balaam curses them, they will be cursed indeed, and they will not give them any trouble. So they went, the elders of Moab went to Balaam, and Balaam said to them, "Spend the night here, and I shall reply to you as the Eternal may instruct me." So the Moabite dignitaries stayed with Balaam. So if we could pick it up at verse 9. Does anyone want to start? Cynthia?
Okay, here we go. God came to Balaam and said, "What do these envoys want of you?" Balaam said to God, "Balak, son of Zippor, king of Moab, sent me this message. Here is a people that came out from Egypt and hides the earth from view. Come now and curse them for me. Perhaps I can engage them in battle and drive them off." But God said to Balaam, "Do not go with them. You must not curse that people, for they are blessed." Balaam rose in the morning and said to Balak's dignitaries, "Go back to your own country, for the Eternal will not let me go with you." The Moabite dignitaries left, and they came to Balak and said, "Balaam refuses to come with us." Then Balak sent out other dignitaries, more numerous and distinguished than the first. They came to Balaam and said to him, "Thus says Balak, son of Zippor, please do not refuse to come with me. I will reward you richly, and I will do anything you ask of me. Only come and damn this people for me." Balaam replied to Balak's officials, "Though Balak were to give me his house full of silver and gold, I could not do anything, big or little, contrary to the command of the Eternal my God. So you too stay here overnight, and let me find out what else the Eternal may say to me." That night God came to Balaam and said to him, "If these envoys have come to invite you, you may go with them. But whatever I command you, that you shall do." When he arose in the morning, Balaam saddled his ass and departed with the Moabite dignitaries. But God was incensed at his going. So an angel of the Eternal took a position in his way as an adversary. He was riding on his she-ass and his 2 servants alongside. When the ass caught sight of the angel of the Eternal standing in the way with his drawn sword in his hand, the ass swerved from the road and went into the fields, and Balaam beat the ass to turn her back onto the road. The angel of the Eternal then stationed himself in a lane between the vineyards with a fence on either side. The ass, seeing the angel of the Eternal, pressed herself against the wall and squeezed Balaam's foot against the wall, so he beat her again. Once more the angel of the Eternal moved forward and stationed himself on a spot so narrow that there was no room to swerve right or left. When the ass now saw the angel of the Eternal, she lay down under Balaam, and Balaam was furious and beat the ass with his stick. Then the Eternal opened the ass's mouth and she said to Balaam, "What have I done to you that you have beaten me these 3 times?" Balaam said to the ass, "You have made a mockery of me. If I had a sword with me, I'd kill you." The ass said to Balaam, "Look, I am the ass that you have been riding all along until this day. Have I been in the habit of doing thus to you?" And he answered, "No." Then the Eternal uncovered Balaam's eyes, and he saw the angel of the Eternal standing in the way, his sword drawn in his hand. Thereupon he bowed right down to the ground. The angel of the Eternal said to him, "Why have you beaten your ass 3 times? It is I who came out as an adversary, for the errand is obnoxious to me. And when the ass saw me, she shied away because of me those 3 times. If she had not shied away from me, you are the one I should have killed, while sparing her." Balaam said to the angel of the Eternal, "I erred because I did not know that you were standing in my way. If you still disapprove, I will turn back." But the angel of the Eternal said to Balaam, "Go with those envoys, but you must say nothing except what I tell you." So Balaam went on with Balak's dignitaries.
Oh, we got to talk about this. This is wild.
I really like the ass a lot.
I feel bad for him.
I know. Why was he beaten out of nowhere?
I know.
You got to listen to your ass, not beat it.
Yeah.
When your ass talks to you, you got to listen to it. You don't beat your ass.
But doesn't this make it so funny? Because we were reading this, we were kind of going through this last night, but it does make sense in a lot of ways that perhaps an angel, you know, maybe as my camera goes off, there might be something about animals might see an angel before we might recognize them, right? And so it's interesting if we have problems with an animal, maybe they're seeing something that we don't see.
Well, they do say that animals do see spirits that we don't see. They actually say it, especially cats. Cats see spirits.
But the idea here, though, is that Balaam is supposed to kind of be like a type of prophet, like.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like he should have known
better, yeah.
And that's why he even apologizes. Like, I erred because I didn't. In other words, that was my mistake. I should have seen you there.
Yeah.
But didn't, you know.
And the other thing, too, is so it says the Eternal opened the donkey's mouth. And, I mean, I've never heard of an animal speak to me, but I've looked at my dog and I can kind of imagine what might be coming out of my dog's thoughts. But it doesn't seem that far-fetched, does it? I don't know.
Did you ever watch Mr. Red?
Yeah, Mr. Ed. Mr. Ed.
Wilbur.
Wilbur.
Yeah. I mean, he was a horse, but not a horse's ass.
A horse
but,
of a horse's.
No, but,
horses of a horse.
Yeah. No, but no, there are certain things about that, like the perception, like an animal's perception. Or...
But I want you to know, I know you're going to laugh when I say this, but my daughter's dog was upset with her, and he really started almost talking to her. He was going, he was very upset about something. But
really?
I really felt like he was trying to talk.
Really?
Yeah, my daughter's dog really is very expressionist, very expressive.
That's great.
What about Cole? What about Cole, honey?
Cole?
Definitely.
What's up with Cole?
Is that your dog?
It's a cat.
A cat. Your cats talk a lot too. Yeah.
He's very talkative.
Yeah.
I believe a lot of animals are talking to us. We just don't know what they're saying. But I believe animals do talk to you.
The Cole just like he talks to Gary when he comes over. He always like goes up and he goes over to him and he's like he's like, pick me up, come on. He just talks to Gary over and over and over again.
He sticks his tail in my face,
and then he pushes the other cat that always comes in to say goodnight to Gary. Like, her name is Simona, and he always comes into my room when we talk to Gary on the phone. Like, she hears his voice and she pushes open my door and come in.
Wow.
And then he comes in. Cole is her son, and he's bigger, and he comes in and he like nudges her out of the way. It's like, no, my time with Gary, me, you know, and she always lets him like have the first day. So he's kind of like a bully, I think. But
sweetie pie.
Oh, he just is very possessive of Gary. That's all.
Yeah, he is. They all are. They like him. They love him.
I love
Leo's always skittish, but the other two are just like him.
Cynthia, do you have any animal stories?
I have always had animals all my life. And I just lost my last dog in
I'm sorry.
March. Right?
Sorry.
Yeah. March was a tough time for me. He was 16.
Oh.
And I know I can't have any more because I can't care for them. I can't walk him. He was 16. We both got old together. So that was all right, my little teddy bear. But I love animals. I love them. That's why I get even upset when I hear about read the Bible, the beating an animal or breaking a red calf and killing it. And it makes me mad.
Oh.
Yeah.
I can't deal with that stuff. Unfortunately, I learned to like meat before I knew what I was eating. So,
Nice.
now I'm in a bad habit.
I know. It tastes so good sometimes. Oh my goodness. I wish Ellie could talk.
I know.
Ellie, can you hear us?
Ellie.
Want me to read on? Okay. When Balak heard that Balaam was coming, he went out to meet him at Moab, which is on the Ammon border at its furthest point. Balak said to Balaam, when I first sent to invite you, why didn't you come to me? Am I really unable to reward you? But Balaam said to Balak, and now that I have come to you, Have I the power to speak freely? I can utter only the word that God puts into my mouth. Balaam went with Balak, and they came to Kiryat Huzot. Balak sacrificed oxen and sheep and had them served to Balaam and the dignitaries with him. In the morning, Balak took Balaam up to the Bamoth Baal. From there, he could see the portion of the people. Balaam said,
I'm going to cut you off a little bit because this starts it's like 3 different times that Balak asked Balaam to curse the people, and Balaam always sets it up the same way. Balaam says, "Build me 7 altars here and have 7 bulls and 7 rams ready here for me." Balak did as Balaam directed, and Balak and Balaam offered up a bull and a ram on each altar. Then, and Balaam said, "Stay here beside your offerings while I'm gone. Perhaps the Eternal will grant me a manifestation, and whatever is revealed to me, I will tell you." And he went off alone. So Balaam always tells Balak, "I'm only going to do what God tells me to do." God became manifest to Balaam, who stated, "I have set up the 7 altars and offered up a bull and a ram on each altar." And the Eternal put a word in Balaam's mouth and said, "Return to Balak and speak thus." So Balaam returns to him and found him standing beside his offerings and all the Moabite dignitaries with him. He took up his theme and said, "From Aram has Balak brought me, Moab's king from the hills of the east. Come curse me, Jacob. Come tell Israel's doom. How can I damn God? How can I damn whom God has not damned? How doom when the Eternal has not doomed? As I see them from the mountaintops, gaze on them from the heights. There is a people that dwells apart, not reckoned among the nations. Who can count the dust of Jacob, number the dust cloud of Israel? May I die the death of the upright. May my fate be like theirs." So that's not a curse at all. It's somewhat of a blessing. But then Balak said to Balaam, "What have you done to me? Here I brought you to damn my enemies. Instead, you have blessed them." He replied, "I can only repeat faithfully what the Eternal puts in my mouth." Then Balak said to him, "Come with me to another place from which you can see them. You will see only a portion of them. You will not see them at all, and damn them from there." So he took him to another place, and it was they repeated this ritual, and then Balaam speaks of what God tells him to speak, and he says, "Up, Balak, attend, give ear unto me, son of Zippor. God is not human to be capricious, or mortal to have a change of heart. Would God speak and not act, promise and not fulfill? My message was to bless. When God blesses, I cannot reverse it. No harm is in sight for Jacob, no woe in view for Israel. The Eternal, their God, is with them, and their kings acclaim in their midst. God, who freed them from Egypt, is for them like the horns of the wild ox. Lo, there is no augury in Jacob, no divining in Israel. Jacob is told at once, yea, Israel, what God has planned. Lo, a people that rises like a lioness, leaps up like a lion, rests not till it has feasted on prey and drunk the blood of the slain." Ooh.
Wait, just before you go on, I just want to mention that the whole time that Balaam is saying all these things, you were saying, well, he's just saying what God wants him to say. I got the impression of this whole thing that God was putting these words in his mouth, not that he was doing it by his own will. That's what I got out of it. So I was wondering if somebody else had that type of view.
That's basically, I think, what Balaam is telling him right up front is like, I can only, like, whatever I say will just be whatever words God puts in my mouth.
Yeah, that's right. It wasn't that he might have wanted to say something different, but he couldn't because God was putting the words in his mouth. That's it.
Right.
Yeah. That's
almost like he himself has no control over it. He's just,
right. That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Right. But also it speaks of Balaam's faith, right? Because he always is faithful to God no matter what, even though he's not an Israelite, which I find very interesting, right? It's like,
I wasn't sure about that. And
he does end up getting killed later too.
But see, that's the thing. I didn't get that he was that religious to God. I think that God was putting those words in his mouth to teach a lesson for Balak. But I don't think it was that Balaam was so devout to God. That was what I got out of it. So,
okay.
Yeah.
That's good. Does anyone want to read? Because now we're getting up to the really good one. The third one is the best one. Does anyone want to read from here on? And it's funny in a lot of ways. But go ahead. If anyone could start the 25th on number 25, up on the top corner.
Okay. Thereupon Balak said to Balaam, "Don't curse them and don't bless them." In reply, Balaam said to Balak, "But I told you, whatever the Eternal says, that I must do." Then Balak said to Balaam, "Come now, I will take you to another place. Perhaps God will deem it right that you damn them for me there." Balak took Balaam to the peak of Peor, which overlooks the wasteland. Balaam said to Balak, "Build me here 7 altars and have 7 bulls and 7 rams ready for me here." Balak did as Balaam said. He offered up a bull and a ram on each altar. Now Balaam, seeing that it pleased the Eternal to bless Israel, did not, as on previous occasions, go in a search of omens, but turned his face toward the wilderness. As Balaam looked up and saw Israel encamped tribe by tribe, the Spirit of God came upon him. Taking up his theme, he said, "Word of Balaam, son of Beor, word of the man whose eye is true, word of one who hears God's speech, who beholds visions from the Almighty, prostrate, but with eyes." Don't keep on moving. Every time you move it, I prostrate, but with eyes unveiled. "How fair are your tents, O Jacob, your dwellings, O Israel, like palm groves that stretch out, like gardens beside a river, like aloes planted by the Eternal, like cedars beside the water." You want me to continue? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. "Their boughs drip with moisture. Their roots have abundant water. Their rulers shall rise above Agag. Their sovereignty shall be exalted. God who freed them from Egypt is for them like the horns of the wild ox. They shall devour any enemy nations, crush their bones, and smash their arrows." Where am I? Oh, they crouch, they lie down like a lion, like a lioness who dares rouse them. Blessed are they who bless you, accursed they who curse you. Want me to continue reading?
Does anyone else want to continue? Annie?
Enraged at Balaam, Balak struck his hands together. "I called you," Balak said to Balaam, "to damn my enemies, and instead you have blessed them these 3 times. Back with you at once to your own place. I was going to reward you richly, but the Eternal has denied you the reward." Balaam replied to Balak, "But I even told the messengers you sent to me, though Balak were to give me his house full of silver and gold, I could not of my own accord do anything good or bad contrary to the Eternal's command. What the Eternal says, that I must say. And now, as I go back to my people, let me inform you of what this people will do to your people in days to come." He took up his theme and said, "Word of Balaam, son of Beor, word of the man whose eye is true, word of one who hears God's speech, who obtains knowledge from the Most High, and beholds visions from the Almighty, prostrate, but with eyes unveiled. What I see for them is not yet. What I behold will not be soon. A star rises from Jacob. A scepter comes forth from Israel. It smashes the brow of Moab, the foundation of all children of Seth. Edom becomes a possession. Yea, Seir a possession of its enemies, but Israel is triumphant. A victor issues from Jacob to wipe out what is left of Ur. He saw Amalek, and taking up his theme, he said, "A leading nation is Amalek, but its fate is to perish forever." He saw Canaanites, and taking up his theme, he said, "Though your abode be secure and your nest be set among cliffs, yet shall Cain be consumed when Asher takes you captive." He took up this theme and said, "Alas, who survive except God has willed it? Ships come from the quarter of Kittim. They subject Asher, subject Eber. They too shall perish forever." Then Balaam set out on his journey back home, and Balak also went his way.
So that's kind of the end of that story, even though the portion continues on. What do you think of that?
Nothing.
Cynthia?
I don't think anything. I'm trying to digest the whole thing.
It's a lot. It's a lot. That's why I encourage you to read it again, maybe when you have a little time to. It's
well, there was somewhere along the line where they were following everything God was saying, and I thought he got rid of somebody. I got to go back. Can you go back a little? I just want to see that. The foundation. Right. Oh, so there was something about that bothered me. He obtains knowledge from the Most High and beholds vision, but with eyes what I see them is not yet living. No, that's not it. I don't know where it is now.
Go ahead.
There was something that happened where no matter what he did, there was somebody else that was being punished. And I for the first time, I used to hear about that the Jewish God was an angry God, and I got that feeling in reading this. And I know that sounds, but it was like no matter what you did, God was going to punish you. That was the feeling I got when I was reading this. I don't know why. I'm just saying, I'm not saying it's true or anything. I'm just telling you what my feeling was at the moment. Mm-hmm. And I don't know where I saw it. Somebody was being cursed even though they were doing what was right.
Oh, wow.
He isn't a God of love. This is what bothers me throughout this. This isn't a God of love. That's
what I feel. Yeah, that I've heard this from Christians saying to Jews all the time that the Jewish God is an angry God, and I see this, and sometimes in the Pasha, and it bothers me. Yeah. So, what do you have to say about that, Gary?
I think it's just cause and effect.
Okay.
I mean, I think the God's laws are based on, I don't know, just certain natural things. And there's no way, those laws are absolute. So it's like if you stray from them even slightly, the consequence can seem severe and harsh, and you could say God seems. But I always use the example at Shalom, like when he talks about the law of gravity. That's like saying the law of gravity is harsh. If a little baby jumps off the edge of a building, they crash.
Right.
But it seems harsh, but it's cause and effect. That's just to me.
Yeah. Well, but the only thing I saw is I thought that they were trying to do what God wanted, and still he was unhappy. It was I got the feeling that he got rid of somebody in the middle of this. I was reading it, and I said,
"Well, they were getting rid of everybody. I mean, but that was part of the destiny.
What are you talking about?
Peace. You gotta kick some ass on the road to peace, right?
Yeah.
Well, back then, perhaps. I don't know about now. I think back then, But I don't. Yeah, I can understand how that might be. I mean, to me, it's like I don't look at it as individual times that God might be angry or might be happy or sad or anything, because it's like there's a whole story, right? I mean, everything fits more together. And I mean, I think with Torah, because the big arch of the Torah is to get from point A to point B.
I get it. Yeah.
It's there's got to be some rules along that road, and and it's to me as a Christian, that road is so important, right? Because then if the Jews don't get from Egypt to the Promised Land, then nothing else can happen. That's how I feel about it. I feel like, please, like the world is depending on this small group of people to get over there. It's like, and it's so exact. And I mean, I'm sure.
Incidentally, it wasn't a small group; it was like thousands.
Right, thousands, but compared to the whole entire world, it was kind of tiny, but or however we would think. But anyway, that's my take on it. It's like this crucible is so important to just bring this, that it's like there's no leeway. There's no don't stop over there at the mini mart and spend too long. You got to get going. You got to move forward. And then all these different lessons that come out of it are for everybody. I mean, the lesson of first sending the spies into the Holy Land and saying, And then they come back. 10 of them come back. 10 out of 12 come back. No way, we're not going in. These guys.
Yeah, they're big, giant grasshoppers.
Yeah, huge. Don't go. And then Joshua and Caleb come out and they're like, come on, we got grapes, we got wine. It's beautiful. This is wonderful. That to me is like such a huge lesson for anybody living on this planet. Any person,
Right,
you know, that whole lesson is for everybody. It's like so. Because I've experienced that lesson. I've experienced it personally. God shows me one thing, I choose something else, and I suffer for 40 years. Hey, oy vey. But am I better for it? Yes, we're all better for this journey. This journey is so vast, and so everybody goes through this journey. I mean, right. I think it's the most incredible thing.
It's true.
But Cynthia, what did you think?
I think what you said was, I told you I have to digest the whole thing, because sometimes when I read, I have difficulty sometimes getting anything out of these stories, any kind of inspiration and so on. I find it difficult. Mm-hmm. They're stories, it's a history of a people, but to find divinity in it, I struggle with it.
I mean, to me, the love of God is so huge in the Torah, because it's, I don't know, I can't even describe it, of how much I see the love that's there. You know, it's like he never abandons them, even though he talks about how much he wants to, like any parent. We all, if we're on any parent, sometimes we just got to get away from this guy.
You know, I think of the Jewish people, the Israelites, like all his children, and they're all being like teenagers and rebelling at the same time. That's what they're like. It's like, now what do you want me to do? Oh, I already did this. Now you want me to drink? I can't drink? Now where's the water? You know, all that stuff, you know?
I'm going to kill you.
You know, and fine, take the car keys. Just get out of my sight. Oh, man. Okay, so let's wrap this up, because we got one more chapter, and guess what? We're going to be ending with a plague. I'm just
what else?
Fair warning. Fair warning.
And as Archie Bunker would say, those plagues are beautiful. They're in the Bible. They're needed.
Cynthia, would you like to read 25?
Sure.
Verse 1.
While Israel was staying at Shittim, the menfolk profaned themselves by whoring with the Moabite women, who invited the menfolk to the sacrifices for their God. The menfolk partook of them and worshipped that god. Thus Israel attached itself to Baal Peor, and the Eternal was incensed with Israel. The Eternal One said to Moses, take all the ringleaders and have them publicly impaled before the Eternal, so that the Eternal's wrath may turn away from Israel. So Moses said to Israel's officials, each of you slay those of his men who attach themselves to the Baal Peor. Just then, one of the Israelite nobles came out and brought a Midianite woman over to his companions, in the sight of Moses and of the whole Israelite community, who were weeping at the entrance of the tent of meeting. When Phinehas, son of Eleazar, son of Aaron the priest, saw this, he left the assembly, and taking a spear in his hand, he followed the Israelite notable into the chamber and stabbed both of them.
Oh, lovely.
I know, geez. The Israelite notable and the woman through the belly. Then the plague against the Israelites was checked. Those who died of the plague numbered 24,000. What is the moral of this story? Please explain.
Well, this is this is pretty harsh. I will say that.
Yeah, right.
It's pretty harsh. But again, I think that, I mean, one of the things that as a Christian I always go to is that one of Jesus, the commandment that Jesus said, like when Jesus was preaching, there was a lawyer who said, he said, Rabbi, what is the greatest commandment? And so Jesus said, the greatest commandment is, there's like two parts to it. One is to love God with all your heart, mind, body, and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. And those were like kind of tied together. And so what I always say when I look at that as a Christian, I always say, well, if that's the greatest commandment, what could possibly be the greatest sin? And I'm going to say, from my own personal experience, the greatest sin could be if we don't love God, or if we ignore God, or if we go to worship other gods. Like a lot of people worship like their sports team, or they worship the, you know, the flag or America or whatever. And it's like, I feel like a lot of us sometimes get into a situation where we're really closely going off the wrong path, because we really should, because God, as we know, is one. Echad, right? We sing that all the time. Shema Yisrael. God is one, and that's our oneness. When we get closer to God, we get closer to each other. And so this is very harsh, but it's because God is with them. He's taking them through. And then all of a sudden, these people, these guys, they're the men, all right? These are men, you know, they go have relations with the women, and then they worship the false gods of the women that they start to have relations with. So it's pretty harsh. There's no question.
You know what I don't understand? What was the plague, though? I'm still understanding. I don't understand. I'm trying to read. Where is the plague? What is the plague?
Yeah, it comes up out of nowhere, right?
It's called like, COVID-1 back then.
What is it? What is it? This is where I get confused, because
yeah, it just comes up out of nowhere. I can understand
Cynthia getting confused, because I'm trying to figure out what was the plague. Okay.
Right, and I don't even see that it even started. They just talk about it leaving, right? I mean,
they just talk about the plague. Yeah, then the plague against Israel was checked. Those who died of the plague, number 24,000. That's another thing that interested me. 24,000 is a lot of people. How many people started from Egypt? I want to know. We had a lot of people dying through this time.
Yeah.
We must have had hundreds of thousands starting out.
Because there would have been of all the people that they say left Egypt, they would have been back, and for so many people would have been awful crowded in the desert. I don't think it was that big of a crowd.
It was no. It said it was hundreds of thousands. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe it was like 600,000. Is that
600,000? Yeah, it was something like that. But just this one plague, 24,000 died. That's a lot of people.
And
yeah,
and last week,
people that got last week that got swallowed up in when the earth opened up, all what's his face's people, Korak's people. There's a lot of people.
14,700.
I'll tell you,
14,000.
There's a lot of killing in the tens of thousands. It's just amazing to me. We don't have that many wars that have so many people dying, you know. So.
Yeah. But we're also in a plague too, right? I mean, it's like there's thousands of people.
Yeah, well, that's true.
This is a nightmare. I know.
But the truth of the matter is, even how bad it is, the numbers are still so small. Remember, we have 300 million people in the United States. 300 or 400, I can't remember. But anyways, and it's only been like 2 million people that have died or something. And so that's very small when you think about it. Mm-hmm. I mean, I know that that's terrible, but I'm saying it's still a very small percentage of our population compared to the Spanish flu. Well, I think what's happening is the frustration in the world, not only about Black Lives Matter and everything, but just the frustration of being cooped up for so long. And that the fact that even if you can go outside, like I can go outside now, even if you can go outside, there's not much to do. And so, you know, people are used to doing sports or going to art or cultured things. And I miss all that. Listen to this. I got my membership at the Museum of Fine Arts for the first time this year in February, and then in March, everything closed down. So I haven't had a chance to go to the Museum of Fine Arts, and I was so excited about getting my membership. So the whole thing is ridiculous, you know.
It's
anyway.
You know, but the interesting thing though, and I was just thinking about this before we came on. I was like, we have more people coming to church than we usually do every week. And the other thing too is I was looking at the rain tonight, and I was thinking we don't have to cancel any of our worship services now if we have a snowstorm. You know, we can just do it all on Zoom. we can have 52 weeks of worship services, and even with the synagogue, you know, it's this might be a blessing, you know. It's like,
I think more people are doing services because it's something for them to do, and that they feel like they do want to pray more or be, you know, in a spiritual place. You know,
that's all we got now. If you think about it, we don't have any sports. We can't go to the museum, like you say. We can't really do the parks. So we can't do anything.
We can't have concerts or anything.
Pray to God. Get it on, people. Let's do it.
That's right. God and Torah are accessible.
Torah,
right?
Gospels, the Zohar. Oh, did someone say the Zohar? Oh my goodness.
We're gonna get Rabbi Alon in here.
Rabbi Alon, yes.
Yeah.
Listen to that guy. He'll straighten you out.
We gotta get him in here. Definitely.
Oh. Anyway, I enjoy it.
This was very
Michael.
good.
Yeah, like, if you haven't seen Rabbi Alon, I'm gonna have to put up. Oh man, Gary and I are addicted to Rabbi Alon.
So I got to get my beard to grow like a couple of feet longer.
Who was Rabbi? Oh, Rabbi Alon, you said. Okay.
So this is Rabbi Alon.
Oh, what a nice beard. I like his beard, yeah.
So he had this whole talk about coronavirus, and this came out, I think, March 28th. And anyway, he's you know, he's Hasidic, so he's kosher. He does all, you know, he's got a big...
Oh, well, Hasidic is more than just kosher. Okay, yeah, he's okay, right.
He's full on. So,
Well, what about his past too? He used to.
Oh yeah. So here's the story. The story, and it's worth listening to when he talks about his near-death experience. So he had a near-death experience around the year 2000. He was a DJ, I think, or something in New York, and he was taking a lot of drugs, and he was in a cab, and he died, and so. He had this big experience in the cab, and he was being driven around. But one of the biggest things that he said was, when he was dead in his spirit, he could look at somebody's in their body, like us, the living, and he could see everything about them. Like it was like he could read everything that they had for breakfast, what their problems were.
Wow.
And anytime he looked through the window of a building, and he saw somebody in the building. He saw everything about them. And when he told this to his girlfriend that became his wife originally, she's like, wait a minute, you saw everything? You saw everything that everyone did? And he's like, yeah, I saw you. It's just like, and then she immediately changed her dress. She just wore like the regular Hasidic dress, like
right.
No more tight jeans, nothing like that. Right. So, I mean, but there's a lot more to it than that. But he talks about the Messiah coming. He's had these. He's somebody we're going to probably be all listening to in the future.
That's interesting.
He's well. How would you describe him, Gary? I love the guy. You know,
he's incredible. I like him a lot. He talks a lot.
Oh,
like
yeah.
He'll do a video that's like 2 hours long, and his introduction alone is about 45 minutes. And he keeps talking about how he doesn't want to take too long. Oh, I may have to do another video.
But you look at his eyes, right? He can get kind of antsy and kind of aggressive, but he's always got the very, very peaceful eyes. Like you know, and one of the things that he always talks about is he's very specific. He's saying Messiah is coming, and he's coming. And the thing is either we're going to be ready for it, or if we're not, it's going to be fine. Everything's going to be like just a nice transition, smooth transition, like going into a water. But if we're not ready for it, look out. Like he's saying, it's going to be things you're not even going to conceive of.
Right.
You know, so, and I mean, he's got so many videos out now. So, all right, so you can see
doing
him.
fine.
Awesome. All right,
Shema Yisrael.
Wait a minute.
Adonai Eloheinu.
All right. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. 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 Shem Kivod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael